Welcome to Lecture 23, covering the first aorist active and middle indicative verbs. Since you have already covered the meaning of the aorist tense, there is no difference between the first and second aorist with respect to meaning. The differences are only in how they form the aorist. Therefore, this lecture is dedicated entirely to the formation of the first aorist active and middle indicative. We shall first study the regular first aorist, and then we will look at how the stems ending in stops, contract vowels, and liquid consonants form their first aorists. Section 1, the regular first aorist. We shall begin with the regular first aorist, since it is the foundation for understanding how the other tense stems form their aorists. By default, the first aorist active or middle indicative is built on the aorist tense stem by adding the tense formative sigma alpha, sa. The tense formative sa is the key diagnostic for the first aorist. The first aorist stem is usually the same as the present stem. The first aorist uses the augment, because it's a past tense, and secondary personal endings, because, of course, it is an augmented tense. So those two features go together. The key diagnostic again, the tense formative sigma alpha. This chart shows the building blocks for the first aorist active indicative. We have the augment, it's a past tense. The first aorist tense stem, in this case li. The first aorist tense stem is almost always identical to the verbal root, and it is usually the same as the present tense stem. Then comes the tense formative sigma alpha, which is diagnostic for the first aorist. And finally, the secondary active personal endings. The aorist is an augmented tense, therefore it takes secondary personal endings. Please note that there is no connecting vowel needed. Why is this? Well, simply because the tense formative ends in a vowel, there's no need for a connecting vowel to help join the personal endings. So the building blocks, augment plus first aorist tense stem plus diagnostic tense formative sa plus secondary active personal endings. Here is the paradigm for the first aorist active indicative using the root li. The one singular, elisa, it's formed from the augment epsilon, the tense stem li, the aorist tense formative sa, and there's no personal ending for the one singular, elisa, I loosed. The two singular, elisas, from the augment epsilon, tense stem li, tense formative sa, and the personal ending sigma, elisas, you loosed. The three singular, elise or elisen, augment epsilon, tense stem li. The tense formative for the three singular changes from sa to se. Please note this, it's very important. The tense formative is sa in every form except the three singular, where it changes to se. There's no personal ending for the three singular, but there is an optional movable ni. This gives us elise or elisen, he, she, or it loosed. The one plural, elisamen, or epsilon tense stem li, aorist tense formative sa, and one plural personal ending men, elisamen, we loosed. The two plural, elisate, augment epsilon, tense stem li, tense formative sa, and the personal ending te, used. And finally the three plural, elisan, from the augment epsilon, tense stem li, the tense formative sa, and the personal ending ni. Elisan, they loosed. This chart shows the building blocks for the first aorist middle indicative. Remember that for the aorist tense, the middle and passive forms are different. We have the augment because it's a past tense, then the first aorist tense stem, in this case li. The first aorist tense stem is almost always identical to the verbal root and usually the same as the present tense stem. Next comes the first aorist tense formative sa, sigma alpha, which is diagnostic for the first aorist. And then finally, the secondary passive personal endings. The aorist is an augmented tense, therefore it takes secondary personal endings. Once again, note that there is no connecting vowel. Since the tense formative ends in a vowel, there is no need for a connecting vowel to help join the personal endings. So augment plus tense stem plus tense formative sa plus secondary passive personal endings. Here is the paradigm for the first aorist middle indicative. The one singular, elisamen, is from the augment epsilon plus the tense stem, li, plus the tense formative sa, plus the personal ending main. Elisamen, I loosed for myself. The two singular, eliso, is somewhat irregular. You should be familiar with the fact that the two singular is frequently irregular. It is from the augment epsilon plus the tense stem li plus the tense formative sa plus the actual personal ending sigma omicron. So the intervocalic sigma drops out and then alpha omicron contract to form omega. This gives us eliso. You loosed for yourself. The three singular elisato from the augment epsilon plus the tense stem li plus the aorist tense formative sa plus the personal ending to, elisato, he, she, or it loosed for him, her, or itself. The one plural, elisametha, augment epsilon, tense stem li, tense formative sa, personal ending metha, elisametha, we loosed for ourselves. The two plural, elisaste, augment epsilon, tense stem li, tense formative sa, personal ending ste, you loosed for yourselves. And finally, the three plural, elisanto, from the augment epsilon, tense stem li, tense formative sa, personal ending nto, elisanto, they loosed for themselves. Section 2. Contracts and stops. Verbs with stems ending in a stop or a contract vowel form first aorists. They are entirely regular, provided you recognize how the tense formative sa connects to the tense stem. Actually, these stems behave exactly the same way in the aorist as they do in the future. The reason should be obvious. The future tense formative is sigma, and the aorist tense formative is sigma alpha. Since they both begin with a sigma, they join to the stems ending in contract vowels and stops exactly the same way in the aorist as they do in the future. Let's talk about the first aorist of contract verbs. When the tense formative sigma alpha is attached to a contract verb stem, the contract vowel lengthens. Alpha lengthens to eta, epsilon lengthens to eta, and omicron lengthens to omega. This is already familiar from your study of the future tense. Here are three familiar examples. First, the root agapa becomes agapesa. You can see the vocalic augment alpha has lengthened to eta. Before the tense formative sa, the contract vowel alpha has lengthened to eta. This gives us agapesa. Second, the root pie becomes epiesa. You can see the augment and the contract vowel epsilon has lengthened to eta before the tense formative sa, yielding epiesa. And finally, the omicron contract form plero becomes eplerosa. This time, the vowel omicron, the contract vowel omicron, has lengthened to omega when the tense formative sa was added, eplerosa. So when the tense formative sa is attached to a contract verb stem, the contract vowel lengthens, alpha to eta, epsilon to eta, and omicron to omega. Otherwise, these verbs form entirely regular first aorists. Now let's consider stems ending in stops. You should remember the square of stops from earlier chapters. The table shows what happens when sigma is added to a stem ending in a stop. If the stop is a labial, that is P, veta, or phi, the labial and the sigma join to form psi. If the stop is a velar, that is either kappa, gamma, or chi, the velar and the sigma join to form xi. And if the stop is a dental, either tav, delta, or theta, the dental drops out completely with sigma, leaving just the sigma. Let's see how this works using a common example of each type. First, using the root vlep. When the tense formative sa is added to the stem vlep, the labial p plus the sigma forms psi. Thus we get evlepsa, I saw. Secondly, using the stem dioc, which ends in the velar kappa, when the tense formative sigma is attached, kappa sigma changes to xi, yielding edioxa, I persecuted. And finally, vaptid is a good example of a stem ending in a dental. When the tense formative sigma alpha is attached, the final dental, which is actually delta in this instance, drops out. Hence we get evaptisa, I baptized. We cannot overemphasize the importance of memorizing the square of stops. It is the key to understanding many of the changes in consonants that you encounter both in nouns and in verbs. Section 3. Liquid stems. The final anomaly you need to learn relates to liquid stems, that is, stems ending in lambda, mi, ni, or rho. Liquid verbs have stems ending in lambda, mi, ni, or rho. The tense formative for liquid verbs is alpha instead of sigma alpha. This is the key change. Liquid verbs use only alpha instead of sigma alpha as the first aorist tense formative. There are two diagnostics you can use for liquid aorists. Firstly, the stem vowel is a liquid. Remember, lambda, mi, ni, or rho. And secondly, the tense formative is alpha, not sigma alpha, just alpha. However, the aorist stem is often modified from the root. This can serve as a third diagnostic. So 3 diagnostics: stem ending in a liquid, tense formative is only alpha, and often there's some modification to the stem. Here is an example paradigm for a first aorist liquid verb. We are using the verb meno, meaning I remain. The verbal root is men, but the first aorist tense stem has been modified to mean. It is added an iota. We are not going to recite the paradigm. The key observation is that the tense formative is alpha throughout, except for the active 3 singular. Remember that in the regular first aorist, the active 3 singular tense formative is se instead of sa. The exact same thing happens here, but the sigma has, of course, dropped out. So all we have as the aorist tense formative for the active 3 singular is the epsilon remaining, emine or eminen. We encourage you to study this paradigm a little bit, not with the intent of trying to memorize it. Simply study it so that you can recognize the diagnostics, most particularly the tense formative being alpha instead of sigma alpha, and in the active 3 singular epsilon instead of sigma epsilon. Now let us examine some of the first aorist forms we find in exercise 23. We are going to select 10 aorist verbs that come up in exercise 23, somewhat arbitrarily, and divide them into their constituent parts so that you can see how the first aorist is formed. This is an invaluable exercise that will help you immensely with recognizing unfamiliar forms. We encourage you to do the same with verbs that you encounter while reading the Greek New Testament. Epistevsan, aorist active indicative, 3 plural from pistevo. It means they believed. The root is pistev. The formation is from the augment epsilon plus the tense stem pistev plus the aorist tense formative sa and the 3 plural ending is ni. Epistevsan. Egrapsen, aorist active indicative 3 singular from grapho, meaning he, she, or it wrote. The root is graph. The formation is from the augment epsilon plus the tense stem graph plus the tense formative se. Remember the tense formative for the 3 singular active is se instead of sa. There's no personal ending for the 3 singular, but there's an optional movable ni, which is present in this example. Now, when the tense formative sa, or se in this case, is attached to a stem ending in phi, the labial phi combines with the sigma to form psi. Hence we get egrapsen. Ekalese, aorist active indicative 3 singular from kaleo, meaning he, she, or it called. The root is kale. To be technical, it was actually kalu with the digamma on the end, but the digamma has fallen out by kine times. The formation is from the augment epsilon plus the tense stem kale, the aorist tense formative se. The tense formative is se instead of sa in the 3 singular. There are no personal endings for the 3 singular. There's an optional movable ni, but it's not present in this form. There's one minor anomaly here. You might expect the final epsilon of the stem to lengthen to eta when the tense formative sa is added, but it doesn't. The reason it doesn't is that the original stem ended in a digamma. Regardless, you should have no difficulty recognizing the form, as all of the key diagnostics are present. Egiren, aorist active indicative 3 singular from egiro, meaning he, she, or it raised. The root is eger. The formation begins with the vocalic augment. Epsilon is lengthened to eta. On the tense stem egir, you must notice that the stem ends in rho, and rho is a liquid consonant. Therefore, egiren is a liquid verb. For liquids, the aorist tense stem is alpha instead of sigma alpha, and in the 3rd singular, it is epsilon instead of sigma epsilon. So the epsilon that you see, which might look like a connecting vowel, is actually the remnant of the first aorist tense formative. Thus the epsilon is a somewhat disguised aorist tense formative for the 3 singular liquid verb. There's no personal ending for the 3 singular, but there's an optional movable ni. It's present in this case. Egiren. Apokrinota, aorist middle indicative 3 singular from apokrinome, meaning he, she, or it died. The root is krin, and it's got the preposition apo in compound. Turning to the formation, we first have the preposition apo, then the augment epsilon, and the tense stem krin. Please note that krin ends in the liquid ni. The aorist tense formative for liquids is alpha instead of sigma alpha. The form ends with the 3 singular passive personal ending to. Thus we get apokrinata. Eiren, aorist active indicative 3 singular from ero, meaning he, she, or it lifted up. The root is actually ar. The present tense stem adds an iota to get ero, but the real root is ar, which also doubles as the tense stem for the first aorist. The form begins with a vocalic augment. Alpha has lengthened to eta. Please note that r ends in rho, a liquid consonant. The aorist tense formative for liquid stems is alpha instead of sigma alpha, or for the 3 singular, epsilon instead of sigma epsilon. Thus the epsilon is a somewhat obscured first aorist tense formative. There are no personal endings for the active 3 singular, so the final form is eire or eiren, allowing for the movable ni. Evaptisa, aorist active indicative, first person singular from baptizo, it means I baptized. The root is in fact vaptid, ending in delta. Remember that verbs with stems ending in iso have roots that end in a dental, here delta. It is the present form, which we have in the dictionary, that has a modified tense stem. We have the augment epsilon, the aorist tense stem vaptid, and the aorist tense formative sa. There's no personal ending for the active one singular. If we put these pieces together and making allowance for the fact that the dental delta drops out, remember the square of stops, when the tense formative sigma alpha is added, it yields evaptisa. Eminan, aorist active indicative, third person plural, it's from meno, meaning they remained. The root is men, the aorist tense stem is slightly modified. Remember, many liquid verbs have a modified aorist tense stem. The form begins with the augment epsilon, then the aorist tense stem mean. Because mean ends in a liquid consonant, ni, the aorist tense formative is alpha, not sigma alpha. The active 3 plural personal ending is ni. Putting it together we get eminan. Apengilan, aorist active indicative 3 plural, from apangelo, it means they reported. The root is angel with the preposition apo in compound. The aorist stem is modified to angil, with an extra iota having been added. And another example of the fact that liquid stems often modify the root to form the first aorist tense stem. Turning to the formation, we first have the preposition apo, then the vocalic augment eta, alpha has lengthened to eta, and the aorist tense stem angil. Since angil ends in a liquid, the aorist tense formative is alpha instead of sigma alpha. The form ends with the active 3 plural personal ending ni. Thus we get apengilan. Apestilas, aorist active indicative 2 singular, from apostello, meaning you sent. The root is stel with the preposition apo in compound. The aorist stem is modified to steal with an extra iota. The aorist stem of many liquid verbs is modified, often by adding iota. Turning to the formation, we have the preposition apo, then the augment epsilon, and the aorist tense stem steal. Since steal ends in a liquid, the aorist tense formative is alpha instead of sigma alpha, and the form ends with the active 2 singular personal ending sigma, yielding apestilas. This is the end of lecture 23.